Also developing tonight, a liberal Washington Post columnist is now the target of serious backlash from the left after a moment of brutal honesty about the shooting of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. Jonathan Capehart was one of the media figures who criticized police and how, after the hands up, don't shoot myth quickly spread in the hours after Officer Darren Wilson shot Brown last summer in self-defense. But Capehart, unlike many others, actually took time to read the final DOJ report, realized that Officer Wilson's actions were justified, and became one of the very few brave enough to admit he was wrong.
Brown never surrendered with his hands up, and Wilson was justified in shooting Brown. DOJ was able to present a credible picture of what happened. You can read about the fight between Brown and Wilson in the SUV and the fight over Wilson's gun on page 6, and how hands up, don't shoot, a mantra built on a lie, became the narrative of this sad affair. But we must never allow ourselves to march under the banner of a false narrative on behalf of someone who would otherwise offend our sense of right and wrong. And when we discover that we have, we must acknowledge it, admit our error, and keep on marching.
Howard Kurtz is the host of Media Buzz, which airs Sunday right here on FNC. Good for him. That isn't easy to do.
What you just saw, Megan, was a very courageous thing that too many on the left have been unwilling to do. Jonathan Capehart admitted he was wrong about Ferguson, admitted that he bought into a lie, disavowed the hands up, don't shoot narrative that so many at MSNBC, where he also works, and elsewhere in the media have embraced on the basis of a sliver of evidence, even though it's been disproven now by Eric Holder's Justice Department.
He's getting hit from the left and the right. Some of the right are saying, well, why did you block me on Twitter when I tried to tell you that months ago? But I think that's destructive. When somebody makes a mistake and comes out publicly to own up to said mistake, it's counterproductive to then try to beat him down for the mistake in the first place. He's acknowledging it full-throatedly.
But this is why many people in the commentating business are reluctant to admit error or to take on their own side. And really, let's talk about race here. There's an added dimension of danger when you're an African American taking on the majority of your own community because you will be called a race traitor. I was looking at some of the
right now.
views on
the
Twitter.
right
Absolutely.
is taking some swipes at him, but it's really coming from the left, including one who says, you're wrong. He says, you just demean this child to be accepted by white people. That's one of the tweets directed his way, and there are plenty others that we couldn't put on the air.
Right, demean this child because he, Capehart, was willing to acknowledge that Michael Brown was not the innocent victim which he was initially portrayed by the media. And so to take on your own side, and also think of the distance that Capehart had to travel here. I looked up something he wrote after Michael Brown was killed, and this is about a year after Trayvon Martin was killed. And he wrote, what frightens me more than anything in the world is that the chances are very high that one day I might be in their shoes and might meet their tragic end. So he had to put aside his personal feelings, any feelings of racial solidarity, read the Justice Department report and say, Darren Wilson did the right thing. That was a hard thing to do.
And you read his piece, and he really talks about how what DOJ found made me ill. Wilson knew about the theft of the cigarellos. He had a description of the suspects. Michael Brown fought with Officer Wilson and tried to take his gun. And that whole hands up, don't shoot storyline, which was perpetuated first and foremost by Dorian Johnson, who was the accomplice in the cigarellos theft, was not supported by the evidence. So I look at Jonathan Capehart and I say, good for you. One down, about 10,000 more to go, right? I mean, shouldn't all those people, including the congressmen who were out there perpetuating the myth, the NFL players who were out there perpetuating the myth, shouldn't they all be as vocal about Officer Wilson's vindication as they were in their rush to condemn him unfairly before the facts were in?
Yes, but don't hold your breath. I mean, the easiest thing to do when the facts overtake your position is to move on to the next story or to pivot and talk about, for example, the Justice Department report about the racial discrimination in the Ferguson Police Department, which is also a legitimate part of the story in which Capehart also emphasized. But instead, to go back, retrace your steps, dive into the report, say I was wrong, put it on video, I think we'd have a much more honest dialogue, Megan, in this country if commentators on both sides were to follow that example.
That's right. I couldn't agree with you more. And I say again, good for him. Howie, good to see you.
My pleasure.